Right, Peter, it's been a while since we had a chat, and a lot of things have happened in your life. Tell me how you've shifted a lot from when I met you a few years ago, and I think you were just being employed doing training into starting your own business right now, and growing the business. How have things affected you? How have the last few months affected you and your business?
Actually, well, should we tell your viewers a little bit about me and what I do? My background, pretty well, I spent 23 years addicted to drugs and alcohol as a meth cook, as you know, for about 8 odd years. And I've been to jail for firearms and manufacturing and a range of other things. But sort of in 2005, after seeing a young boy pretty well beaten to death in prison, and another one that couldn't read or write at 17 years of age, I decided I really wanted to help. So being ADHD and dyslexic, I didn't really know where to start, but I sort of got out of prison in 2005 with just a passion to help young people. And so at that time, what happened is I enrolled in MIT to try and become a counsellor. At the same time, I sort of got involved in recovery networks and co-founded uh, consumer network with people with lived experience of mental health and addictions in counties Manukau, which actually sort of morphed into Drive Consumer Direction, which is one of the biggest consumer networks now in Australasia. But at the same time, I went back to school. I got my qualifications as a counsellor at MIT. And then went to AUT and did postgrad in addictions, and then another 4 years at Auckland University doing health sciences, including pediatrics, youth health, alcohol and drug. And then sort of when I met you, I had just managed to get a job at Abacus Counselling, Training and Supervision, and I worked for them for around 10 odd years in workforce development. So they gave me lots of opportunities, training all counties, Manukau, DHB, alcohol and drug, mental health, suicide, motivational interviewing, and things like that. And at the same time, I sort of got to the point where I wanted to do more and different, and so with the blessing of Abacus Counselling, Training and Supervision, I sort of walked away with their support and opened my own business called MESNZ, or Meth Education and Solution Services. And they gave me a service delivery contract, so I still had the capacity to deliver the stuff that I had been delivering over the 10 years, but also gave me the opportunity to work in areas that I'm really, really passionate about. And so some of those areas are things like I'm a counsellor, of course. I do work with young, high-risk youth. I do a lot of workforce development right around the country, right from the ministry down to people with lived experience. I also educate in a lot of the high schools in Auckland, Year 13 health sciences and things like that. But my passion really at the moment, bar helping young people, is to develop the capacity of communities to self-heal instead of relying on resources from services to come in and fix them. How do we develop the capacity? And that's a big chunk of the work I was doing prior to the lockdown. And then what happened, of course, Thursday prior to the lockdown, as your diary probably was too, mine was full. I had 6 trainings right around the country over that week. And Thursday, we started to get some inkling that things were going to change. By Saturday, we got notification that pretty well we were going to be in lockdown, and pretty well my diary just went zoom, you know, empty completely. And of course, like everyone that owns a small business, I guess the first thing you do is panic. Oh my God, I've lost my income. This is how am I ever going to survive this? All those sort of crazy things. And then on top of that, I had fears of my wife, who's works at Middlemore Hospital, having to go to work in the midst of it, and protecting my 2 young girls and that. And once I got over the initial shock, it really sort of came back to how can I make the most out of this opportunity? How can I sort of spend time with my girls? And how can I sort of continue, I guess, to keep my face out there and keep present and keep relevant, whilst helping others. And so I've been doing clinical supervision for organisations. I've been doing training sessions each week on different topics around how to help others and help yourself, or self-care, or alcohol and drug. Doing one tomorrow on motivational interviewing for practitioners, and we've already got 70 odd people confirmed on that. So yeah, it's definitely changed, but actually it's a good opportunity to reflect on a better future for me. So
right, yeah. Yeah, you have. I was going to ask you that question later on, but you already brought this up, so I'll ask you. Your story is really quite incredible. If you look at where you were and where you are right now, you started in life really making some horrible or bad or wrong decisions, and then you completely changed over. What was what was the process? How did you end up being in the process of being a drug user? I think you used to cook meth as
yep.
well, didn't you? And sell it, and then getting into prison. How did that start?
So it's really funny. What a lot of people don't realise about addiction is, it's not really a choice for many people, and it's not that people are bad people. It's complex. It's interaction between biological stuff. So I'm ADHD as an example of that, right? And about 25 to 30% of ADHD kids will have a substance use disorder by the time sort of 16 or 17, because we don't get the support that we should in certain places. From a psychological perspective, I guess I grew up in an environment, Kaikoura, which drugs and alcohol were prominent, even though my dad was the mayor of Kaikoura and my mum was a senior principal at Kaikoura Hospital. It was everywhere. But realistically, from a psychological perspective, I as a young person, I was nicknamed Coogee Bear, right? And the reason I was nicknamed Coogee Bear, because I was sort of short and a little bit podgy, but although I was ADHD, most ADHD kids are really highly intelligent and highly empathetic, and when they find something they're passionate about, they're generally pretty good at it. And so I was the sort of person that would help anyone that was hurt. I'd jump into fights and protect people, and that was my nature. I was really empathetic. But I got sent to boarding school at 12 years old. I was the youngest in the school, and my parents were going through a bit of a hard time, and I got sent to boarding school. And not only was I the youngest in the school, I was ADHD, and I was short and slightly overweight. And so my nickname then became Patricia. And for a whole year at boarding school, basically I was beaten, daily abused. I was sexually abused. And this isn't just from the other boys. This was also the staff. They couldn't manage my ADHD, so I would get caned daily. And I ended up at 12 years old with more canes than anyone in the school of 1,000. And even when the canes didn't work, they used to do things like send me down to the swimming pool in the middle of winter and make me swim links in a green swimming pool, and then fire hose me. And so I used to run away from there and break into cars, and got into drugs, and drugs, weed, alcohol, those sort of things gave me the escape. And then when I turned sort of 13 into 14, went into the fourth form year, what actually happened was I was over being abused. I went back into the school. There was a sixth former that came down to me and told me to move out of the way, Patricia. And I said, don't call me Patricia. He says, what are you going to do about it, Patricia? And I basically jumped on him and beat the living crap out of him, right? And I was half his size, and I learned in that moment, for good and not so good, that violence was a way of sort of managing my world. If people were going to impinge on my rights, I'd use aggression and violence and things like that. And that became the learned behavior. So for the next 20 odd years, alcohol and drugs helped me escape what had gone on for me. It also gave me a presence and community to hang with. But it also sort of took me to places that I didn't really want to be. And 35, I popped out of that and went back to university. And so for me, addiction is complex, right? It's not that people are bad, or anyone can fall into addiction. And I see that all the time: professionals, doctors, nurses, real estate agents,
Yeah.
and different drugs, alcohol, marijuana, methamphetamine, ecstasy, cocaine amongst our riches, whānau, it's there. So that's sort of how I got into there. And I guess in jail at 35, I realised that this is where I wanted to be, and I really wanted to help young people not end up in that same spot, and that's what drove me, right? And that's
Mm.
what got me out and
Yeah.
drove me, and here I am now. I guess as far as the work that I do, I'm one of the more well-known and respected alcohol and drug educators
Yeah.
now in New Zealand, and I'm listened to by the ministries and addiction services. I train
Yeah.
most of them in Auckland, and that's still my passion, is to ensure our young people don't get caught up in the addiction world and find a way through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really amazing. It really is an amazing story of change. And inspiring to see. Have you? I don't know if you've started doing this or if it's something that you're planning on doing. Have you started going around to see if you can do keynote speaking on in schools or organizations, just to tell the story and try and help through that?
Yeah, currently I am, and I do training to about 13 or 14 schools. I do a lot of keynote speaking at like New Zealand lactation consultants conferences, and midwifery conferences and things like that. So I do a lot of sort of speaking in lots of different areas. My work ranges from implementing alcohol and drug policies in organisations right through to, standing in front of 400 school children and sharing my story for inspiration and hope,
Yeah.
to sitting with 30 people that are fresh in recovery, sort of trying to teach them skills on how to survive a world without alcohol and drugs. So I do lots of work. Actually, an area that I'd be interested in getting into is into
Mm.
businesses. There is a lot of, well, dare I say it, middle class sort of whānau that have their kids struggling with addiction in
Mm.
there, and many of them still see alcohol and drugs as the problem,
Yeah.
not the fact that their kids are struggling with depression, anxiety, or social connection challenges, or a range of other complexities, and sort of starting to educate in that way, and get, there's going to be a wave coming through, I'm sure, of people that lose their businesses over this period, that are going to go from life was good to holy heck, where are we now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And picking up some of those, and helping them find a way through, because I believe many of the people like myself that have come from my background and have some recovery tools and ways of managing are utilizing those tools now
Yeah.
in this environment we're in, whereas many others haven't had to do that.
Yeah.
I was socially, I was locked down several times and couldn't get out. So this one's a little bit nicer than my previous sort of lockdown experiences.
Yeah, yeah. I was just going. My next question was going to be, how did you handle yourself in the lockdown right now? But you just answered that by saying, well, this is the easiest lockdown I've been in.
Oh no, so that was a long time ago. Those things. So for me, I found lockdown initially a little bit anxiety inducing, but utilizing all the skills that I have, mindfulness, being thankful for what we actually have, you know, uh, taking joy and reconnecting, or really connecting with my kids. I've always had a philosophy, from the time we started our business, my wife and I, that it's not all about the money, right?
Mm.
It's never been all about the money. It's about putting good out and getting good back. And the more good you put out, the more good you get back. And for me, over this period of time, what I've sort of noticed is that, you know, with my wife always starts early in the morning and finishes so she can pick up the girls from school. I always start a bit late, so I make them breakfasts and that. And so we have a system where, you know, we try and stay fully connected with our kids. But in the chaos of school and then dancing and all those sort of things, you do get disconnected from them.
Yeah.
And it's just been really, really nice to every day. My favorite bit of the day is going for a walk with my girls,
Mm.
because they're not distracted by devices and things like that, and we get to really connect. And so for me, I love gardening. We've been doing lots of planting and gardening. I like nature. Um, yeah, practice my mindfulness, and one of the benefits of the stuff that I do is when you give up good stuff, it makes you feel good. So all the stuff that I'm doing over this period to help others,
Mm.
keeps me on track, keeps me
Yeah.
relevant, and
Yeah.
thankful. So yeah,
Yeah, brilliant. So I haven't asked this question before, but I'll ask you that because you kind of mentioned it. For people who are, we are changing a little bit from where we were in level 4, and now we're 3, and it's easier and probably hopefully going into level 2 or even easier in a week or so. But we are still separated from each other, from friends or communities. What would be some things that you would recommend to people to just help them be a little bit more relaxed about where they are and let go of all the anxieties and the issues that they have so they can continue to enjoy their life right now?
yeah. So yet again, it is about being thankful for what you actually have. We can't predict what's coming, and for me, there is lots of organisations out there that are doing phenomenal work connecting people that are struggling over this period. So, some of the ones that I work with in Clendon, the Pride Project, Clendon Pride, they've just won an award actually
Hmm.
for their service to the community. They go out and feed families and ensure they've got everything, all their basics, and but they've also got a whole lot of online stuff. Um, the heart movement and GI is part and parcel of some of the trainings I've been doing. The heart movement, healthy relationships, and they've got lots of links around diet, exercise, mindfulness, training, and it's all for free. It's all there. It's all accessible to anyone. Um, Drive Consumer Direction and Lambie Drive, Counties Manukau, have a massive online selection of mindfulness and meditation and things like that. But also you can go on to Google Play and download mindfulness apps
Mm.
and things like that. So it's really from a biological perspective to keep yourself well. It's about good diet and exercise, eating the right foods. From a psychological perspective, it is staying connected, even though we can't physically, we can actually stay connected. And
Yeah.
what I've noticed over this period, I don't know if you have, is that walking around the neighbourhood, people are much more willing to say hi and
Yeah.
smile and sort of, and so even that interaction, that connection there. So have good people from a psychological perspective, have good people to talk to, reach out, ask for help if you need it. There's numbers like the 1737 number if you're struggling with anxiety or depression. John Kerwin's just put out an app around how to keep yourself well over this period. So there's lots and lots of resourcing. You just need to ask for help or reach out or go online and have a look. From a social perspective, um, yet again, it comes back to that sort of knowing that the connection is coming. How can we maintain some form of connection until such time as we get that? And I guess the last aspect of a biopsychosocial model is wider or spirituality. Whatever way, shape, or form that
Yeah.
looks like to you. It's to me, it's about hopes, dreams, aspirations, and
Mm.
potential, and that connection stuff. And so having a balance and knowing when you're not in a good space that it's okay to ask for help. All these sort of things are really good to practice over this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic advice. 'Cause there's so many things that you covered, things that I don't think I knew about as well. But probably one thing that I learned over time is the importance of asking for help when you need it, not
Yep.
being shy about it. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't know what to do, just ask for help, and that really is a helpful thing. Fabulous, Peter. That has been really invaluable. It's so much information and so many different things. My so far my interviews with people were a little bit more business oriented, but with you it's more about life, and that's great to have that conversation as well. One final conversation, looking from now into the future, or one final question, looking from now into the future. What is your message of hope? What are things that you're hoping to see coming out of this, and that will make us people, us the world, much better?
Oh my God, I could do a whole I could do a whole day on this, but for me, in my space, some of the things I'd really like to see is the idea that life isn't all about money. That actually, if we're going to stop the next wave of depression, anxiety, suicide, that actually this time is about reflecting upon how I have a relationship with our kids, our grandkids. How do we sort of move forward as a family unit? How do we arrange our schedule in life to stay connected with our kids? Because look, at the end of the day, a lot of the work I do is around mental health and addictions, and trauma and suicide are massive in New Zealand. So one of the things we know is having good relationships with your parents
Mm.
sort of helps down the line. So I hope that we forge relationships with our young people over this period of time that will help them moving forward. From a greater level, I'd like to think that that we get away from sort of yet again the capitalist idea of where people sit in society. We've seen that it is our social workers, our nurses, our you know our our uh, food
Supermarket people.
catering
Yeah.
and suppliers and the janitors and the cleaners that are actually keeping this country going,
Mm.
and respecting the fact that they have done that. And I guess the other thing is, how do we sort of change the way we see mental health and addictions moving forward? There's going to be a wave of mental health and addictions coming as people lose their businesses, and as people struggle on benefits and things like that. I think what we'll see is a lot of those that have been on a benefit and struggled much of their life. This time may not be much different to them, but there's that wave that are going to come down into that sort of level. And how can we sort of um, instead of judging people for having a dependency and walking away from people because of their mental health, how can we actually put mental health and addictions up there with your general health? And if someone, as an example, if one of the family get cancer, all the family come around and support. Yeah, you've got a family member that's got a meth addiction, and everyone runs 100 miles.
Mm.
And to me, they're both health issues. They're not. It's not a moral or
Right.
criminal issue.
Yeah.
It's a health issue. So how do we sort of move forward, um, removing the stigma and discrimination that is prominent in our community around mental health and addictions? Because at the end of the day, all of us at some point in our life are going to meet the criteria for either a mental health or an addiction
Mm.
issue. So
Mm.
yours might be later on in life, but we all get there eventually. So, how do we be a little bit more gentle on people, more empathetic and understanding, and how do we remove resources from organisations that really are churning people through mental health and addiction wise from a monetary perspective, as opposed to, and that's why I'm so passionate about developing the capacity of communities to self heal. Give them the tools to do it instead of sending someone in to try and fix them. And
Mm.
if we can get to that model, for me, then it will be a win.
Yeah. Yeah. Fabulous. Fantastic. Peter, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience. And I hope people will be able to take some things from here that will help them with their life moving forward. Thank you.
Cool as. And if they need any further information, they can always Facebook me and ask me a question. I've got a bit of free time at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Okay.